The moment she said my name, my shoulders stiffened like someone had tugged a wire under my collar. Not sir, not hey, not the polite fog people use when they don't really see you. My name, clean and certain, spoken by a woman I'd never met. And it happened in the least romantic place on earth. The fluorescent hum of a grocery store on a Tuesday, between the coffee aisle and the discount paper towels. You know that feeling when life has been moving so quietly you stop listening for footsteps? That was me at 61. I wasn't miserable. Misery has edges. You can grab it, complain about it, fight it. What I had was smoother. A calm, worn down kind of loneliness that fits like an old jacket. It doesn't choke you. It just keeps you from reaching. I'd been divorced for 9 years. No scandal. Just two people who got tired in different directions. My son lives in Phoenix, my daughter in Raleigh. They love me and they call, but their lives are loud and fast, and mine is quiet enough that it feels like I'm watching them through thick glass. I work mornings at a hardware store outside Columbus, Ohio, paint desk, key cutting. The odd, can you help me find a bolt that looks like this? I'm good at it. I'm reliable. In a place like that, reliability turns you into furniture. People lean on you, then walk away. That day, I'd stopped after my shift to pick up the boring stuff, decaf, oat milk, oranges, because my doctor says fiber like it's a prayer. I was reaching for the store brand coffee when a cart bumped my heel. I stepped aside, already forming the small apology men my age have perfected. David. I turned. She held her cart with both hands, like she'd been caught doing something bold. Late 50s, I guess. Light brown hair with soft gray threaded through it. Pulled back neatly. A face that didn't try too hard, good skin, attentive eyes, the kind that read rooms. Coat buttoned, scarf tidy. A folded paper list in her hand like she trusted ink more than phones. For half a second, I thought maybe I'd drop something with my name on it. Then I realized she recognized me. I'm sorry, I said. Do I know you? She smiled, not wide. Just enough to show she wasn't teasing. I don't think so. But you work at Banner Hardware, right? Paint desk. You helped me last month, told me to avoid the cheap roller covers unless I wanted fuzz on my walls. The memory surfaced, a woman asking about eggshell finish, laughing quietly when I said Matt lies to you in the dark. That was you, I said, and it sounded like a question. It was, she said. I'm Helen. We stood there with carts and coffee between us, two adults pretending this was normal. Here's the truth. When you're younger, you meet people all the time. When you're older, most new faces stay new forever. So a simple introduction can feel like a door opening in a hallway you assumed was sealed. Nice to meet you, Helen, I said. For real this time. She nodded like she appreciated the wording. For real, she echoed. Then her eyes flicked to my cart, decaf, oranges, the plain evidence of a man trying to stay alive politely. She looked back up. You always shop like you're taking care of someone. I laughed because it was absurdly accurate and I didn't like how easily she'd seen it. I'm taking care of my future self, I said. He's not grateful. Her smile warmed. He might be, she said, if someone's paying attention. There it was, attention. I felt my chest tighten, not dramatically, just enough to notice my own breathing. We talked for maybe 3 minutes. Weather. The price of coffee. A small complaint about the store rearranging aisles like a prank. Nothing you'd call a moment, except it was. Because she didn't rush. She didn't look past my shoulder for someone more interesting. She stayed with the conversation like it mattered. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen with that tiny flash of responsibility people carry when someone else depends on them. I should go, she said. But David, I'm glad I ran into you. I wanted to answer with something safe. Sure, or anytime, or the famous take care. My whole life has been built on sentences that end conversations cleanly. Instead, I heard myself ask, do you live around here? She paused just long enough to make my heart tap once against my ribs. A few streets over, she said. I moved back last year. To be closer to family. It's an adjustment. I knew that word. Adjustment is what we call loneliness when we're trying to behave. She nodded toward the exit. Maybe I'll see you again, she said, and started to push her cart away. And this is where something in me shifted. Because as she rolled off, she added, almost under her breath, "You matter more than you think." Truly. She didn't wait to see what it did to me. She just went like she tossed a stone into still water and walked away from the ripples. I stood there with decaf in my hand and a lump in my throat I didn't have a name for. Part of me wanted to follow her, stop her, ask what she meant, ask why. Another part, the older, trained part, wanted to put the coffee in my cart and go home to the safety of my quiet living room, where nothing surprises me and no one says sentences that make my heart feel young and foolish. So I made a choice right there under the buzzing lights. I didn't chase her, but I didn't swallow it either. I pulled a pen from my jacket pocket. Yes, I carry one. And on the back of my grocery list, I wrote 2 words I hadn't written in years. Talk to her. Then I folded the paper carefully, like it was something worth keeping. That night, I set the list on my kitchen table and stared at it while the house ticked and settled. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was 61. I told myself not to invent meaning where there wasn't any. I even washed the dishes twice just to keep my hands busy, and I left the porch light on longer than usual, as if seeing the driveway could explain what I was feeling. It didn't, of course. Not. And yet, when I turned off the lights, the last thing I saw in the dark wasn't my ceiling. It was her face, and the way she said my name like it belonged to a real person. I turned the steering wheel on purpose, and that's how I knew I was in trouble. Most mornings after my shift, I drive the same route home like a man on rails. Right turn at the light, past the pawn shop, straight through the neighborhood, where every lawn looks like it gave up. But 2 days after that grocery store moment, my hands made a different decision before my brain could argue. I took the long way, the one that passes Cedar Street Cafe. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who goes to cafes. At 61, you get loyal to places that don't ask questions. Diners, hardware stores, your own kitchen. Still, I parked. I sat there for a full minute with the engine off, listening to it tick, feeling ridiculous and awake at the same time. You know what it's like when you tell yourself you're just doing something practical, like getting a decent cup of coffee, when really you're testing whether life is willing to repeat itself. Inside, it smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. I ordered black coffee because ordering anything else felt like pretending. Then I looked around, pretending I wasn't looking around. My fingers kept circling the cardboard sleeve like it was worry stone. I caught my reflection in the glass pastry case, grayer at the temples than I remember, a face that looks capable but not invited. I almost laughed at myself because wanting to be invited is its own kind of hunger. Still, I stayed because leaving would have felt like lying again. She was there. Helen sat by the window with a mug and a folder open, glasses perched low on her nose. Not glamorous. Not trying. Just present. She noticed me the moment I hesitated, and that same calm attention landed on me like a hand on the shoulder. "David," she said, as if we'd agreed to meet. I should have kept walking. I could have nodded, taken my coffee to go, and driven home to safety. That was the first choice, right there. Protect the quiet life I know, or risk being seen again. I walked over. "Helen," I said. "Small town." "Big enough to hide in," she replied, and there was no accusation in it, only recognition. She motioned to the chair across from her. I sat, careful with my knees, careful with my pride. Up close I could see the small things, a faint scar near her eyebrow, the way her hands were steady, the way she held her mug like it was warm, not like it was a prop. Simple coat, no wedding ring, a thin silver bracelet catching the light when she turned a page. "What are you working on?" I asked, nodding to the folder. "Paperwork," she said. "The kind nobody warns you about when you grow up. Forms to move my mother into assisted living. Insurance. Lists." "My dad had those," I said. "After Mom passed. He kept them in a shoebox, like that made it less official." Helen's eyes softened. "Did it?" "No," I admitted. "But it gave him something to hold." We sat in that for a second, not sad exactly, more like 2 people recognizing the same weather. She asked about my work, but not in a polite way. She wanted details. What people buy when they're starting over. What colors men choose when they say they want something lighter. As if paint can fix a year. Helen listened like it mattered. Then she told me about herself, slowly, The way you tell the truth when you don't want pity. She'd lived in Chicago for most of her adult life. A career in administration, schools, nonprofits, the kind of work that keeps systems from collapsing. 2 grown sons, both out west. A husband who'd been kind but restless. We didn't explode, she said, stirring her coffee. We just faded. I stayed. He didn't. That's the whole movie. And then she said the line that made her real to me. I came back because my mother's running out of strength, and I realized I didn't want the last chapters of her life to be handled by strangers. That wasn't romance. That was duty with a heartbeat. I nodded because I understood. It changes your calendar, I said. It changes your sense of time, she corrected gently. You start counting what you have left, not what you can earn. She looked at me over the rim of her mug and said, when I said what I said the other day, I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I've been trying to pretend it didn't hit me, I replied, and surprised myself with the honesty. Helen's smile turned smaller. People get used to being overlooked, she said. And then they start overlooking themselves. I'm trying not to do that anymore. There was a pause. I could have filled it with a joke. I could have made it light and harmless. Second choice. Treat this like friendly conversation, or admit I wanted more of it. What does any more look like for you? I asked. She glanced out the window. It looks like saying yes to small things, she said. A walk. A conversation. Asking for help instead of swallowing it. I felt something shift, an old door creaking open. Then I felt the fear right behind it. Because small things can turn into big ones. And at my age, you don't bounce back from disappointment the way you once did. Her phone buzzed. She checked it, and her face tightened, pulled toward responsibility. That's my sister, she said. Mom's having a rough morning. She started to gather her folder. I stood too. Do you need? I began. She looked at me, and for a moment I thought she might say yes. Then she shook her head. Not today. But thank you for offering. At the door, she hesitated. I'm at the community center on Thursdays, she said. I help with their meal programs sometimes. If you ever feel like being useful in a way that isn't bolts and paint. That invitation landed in a strange place inside me. Half warmth, half warning. Because it wasn't a date. It was real life. The kind that asks you to show up. I watched her walk to her car. Then another car pulled in beside her. A man got out, mid-40s, confident stride. He said something, and she laughed, quick and familiar. He took the folder from her hands like he'd done it 100 times. My stomach dropped before my mind could catch up. Maybe it was her brother. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe it was nothing at all. But the old instinct, the one that keeps you safe by assuming you're not chosen, flared up fast. And as I drove home, that folded grocery list on my kitchen table didn't feel like hope anymore. It felt like a question I wasn't sure I had the right to ask. The joke landed on the paint counter like a hammer, loud enough that a couple customers looked up. You got yourself a girlfriend now, Dave? My coworker Mark said, grinning as he slapped a tint label onto a gallon. He meant it harmlessly. Mark is 42, divorced, still thinks teasing is affection. But when you're 61, certain jokes feel like the world reminding you where it expects you to stand. Off to the side, grateful for whatever attention drifts your way. I forced a chuckle. Just talking to someone, I said. Mark's eyebrows climbed. Talking turns into trouble, especially for an old dog. He winked like he'd handed me wisdom. Trouble followed me all day, through key copies and paint samples. Through the little bell above the door that rang every time someone came in needing something fixed. Because I'd been thinking about Helen more than I wanted to admit, more than was dignified. That glimpse outside the cafe, the man taking her folder, her quick laugh, it had planted a familiar seed. You're late. You're second. You're not the one. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I remembered what she'd said, Thursdays, the community center. And how real that sounded. Real means numbers you don't have saved yet. Hello, I said, stepping into the back aisle where the fluorescent lights don't reach as harshly. David? It's Helen. Her voice was quieter than at the cafe. Tired, but steady. The part of me that had already started retreating tripped over itself when she suddenly appeared again. "Hi, I managed. Everything okay?" She exhaled. "I'm sorry to call you at work. I hope I'm not bothering you." "You're not," I said too quickly. Then softer, "No, you're not. My mother's having a hard week," she said. "She insists she can manage alone, and then she forgets the stove is on. My sister's overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed, and I hate how small I feel admitting that. You know that moment when someone offers you something fragile, not flirting, not romance, just trust, and you realize you're holding a match near dry paper? "Would you be willing to help me after your shift?" she asked. "Just an hour. I need to move a few things at her place, some boxes, a small table. My sister can't leave work. I don't really have people here yet." That was the pressure point. The place where my life split into two possible versions. Version 1. I say yes. I show up. I step into someone's real life, which means I can't keep telling myself I'm invisible. Version 2. I say no. I keep my neat boundaries. I go home and stay safe from looking foolish. Mark's laughter drifted from the front, that easy confidence of a younger man. And the old fear rose. What if I show up and that other man is there? What if I'm the nice older guy she calls when she needs a box carried, and nothing more? Helen waited. She didn't push. That, more than anything, made me want to be brave. "I can help," I said. "After 2. Text me the address." Her breath changed, like tension letting go. "Thank you," she said, and the gratitude in her voice hit me harder than I expected. When I hung up, my hands were slightly unsteady. Not from attraction, from responsibility. At 2:15, I drove to a modest ranch house on a quiet street. Helen opened the door before I knocked. No makeup, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled. Real life. Inside smelled like lavender cleaner and old cooking. An older woman's voice called from the living room, sharp and irritated. "Who is that?" "My friend," Helen answered, and then glanced at me like she'd surprised herself. Friend. That word should have felt safe. Instead it landed heavy, because I didn't know if it was a boundary or a bridge. We carried boxes from a hallway closet to the garage. Light work. Ordinary. But every time Helen spoke, quiet instructions, a small laugh when I bumped my elbow, I felt the same thing, being seen while doing something simple. Then a car door slammed outside. Footsteps on the porch. Helen froze, just for a heartbeat. The man from the cafe stepped in, holding a grocery bag and wearing concern like a jacket. "Hey," he said, then noticed me. Helen swallowed. "David, this is Tom. My sister's husband." Tom's face softened. "Oh, you're the hardware guy." He offered his hand, polite and firm. "Helen talks about you." I shook it, and the heat in my chest changed shape, part relief, part embarrassment at how quickly I'd assumed the worst. Tom set the grocery bag on the counter. "How's she doing today?" he asked. "Up and down," Helen said. "No drama. Just fact." He looked at me, not unkindly. "Appreciate you coming by," he said. "It's a lot on her." I wanted to say something that proved I belonged. Instead, I went with the truth. "I know what it's like when the strong one is the only one holding the rope," I said. Helen's eyes met mine. For one breath, she stopped performing strength. In the living room, her mother sat in a recliner, hands twisting a blanket. She eyed me and snapped, "Who sent you?" "No one," I said. "Just helping." She muttered, "Everyone wants something." The words hung there and forced me to ask what I wanted. And whether wanting anything at 61 was selfish, that I felt my old reflex rise. Step back, stay useful, don't take up space. But another part of me, quiet, stubborn, thought, if I keep shrinking, I'll disappear for good. And I was tired of that. Truly. But the shift didn't erase the deeper feeling. I was standing in her life now, in front of her family, and there was no going back to pretending my days didn't matter. As we lifted the last box, her mother's voice rang out again, angry, frightened. "Helen, don't leave me." Helen's eyes flashed with something raw. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw how heavy her strength really was. And the real question hit me. Was I just helping her move boxes, or was I about to get pulled into a life that would demand more than I knew how to give? 3 days can feel like a month when you're waiting for a phone to light up. I know how that sounds. At 61, you're supposed to be past all this, past hoping, past counting hours like a teenager. But after I helped Helen at her mother's house, after I saw the strain in her eyes and heard that sharp, frightened "don't leave me," my days didn't settle back into their usual quiet. I'd stepped into the edge of her real life. And then nothing. No text. No call. Not even a quick thanks again. Just silence. At first I told myself it was normal. Her mother needed her. That alone could eat up every spare minute. Then the other voice showed up, the one that's kept me safe for years. You misread it. You were useful for an afternoon, and now the door is closed. I tried to be mature about it. I went to work. I mixed paint. I smiled at customers and asked what project they were working on, like my life wasn't quietly held together with tape. But at night, in my kitchen, the silence got louder. I kept checking the screen like it might apologize. I'd set my phone face up on the table during dinner, then scolded myself for it, then did it again. I even drafted a text, just making sure your mom's okay, thumb hovering over send, pride wrestling concern. I deleted it. Twice. There's a special shame in wanting contact, when you've spent years telling yourself you don't need it. So here's the choice I didn't want. Do I reach out and risk looking needy, or do I protect my pride and let whatever this was die without a word? On the fourth day, I did something I haven't done in a long time. I made a plan. Not a grand one. Just a small, practical thing a man can hide behind. I bought a new smoke detector and a pack of AA batteries. Then I drove toward her mother's neighborhood with my heart thumping like I was breaking a rule. Her mother's house looked the same. Trim lawn, tired porch light. I stood on the walkway and almost turned around. That's the thing about pride. Once it's saved you a few times, it starts calling itself wisdom. I knocked anyway. Helen opened the door a few inches, then wider when she recognized me. For a moment she didn't smile. She looked relieved, and then guilty, and then she pulled herself together. "David," she said quietly, "I was just thinking about you. I'm not here to pressure you," I said, and hated how careful my voice sounded. "I had an extra smoke detector at work. Thought your mom might need one. And batteries." Helen's shoulders dropped a fraction, like she'd been holding them up for days. "Come in," she said. "Please." Inside, her mother was asleep in a recliner, mouth slightly open, a daytime TV show murmuring. Helen led me into the kitchen like we were sneaking around a sleeping volcano. "I'm sorry I didn't call," she whispered. "It's been nonstop." "It's okay," I whispered back, though it wasn't. Not because she owed me attention, but because the silence had pulled old scars open. She poured 2 cups of coffee without asking. The kind of move that says, "I want you here, I'm just not good at the steps." "I didn't want to drag you into this," she said, staring into her mug. "You helped once, and then I thought, don't make a pattern. Don't start depending on someone you hardly know." "That's a reasonable rule," I said. "I've lived by it." Her eyes flicked up. "Has it worked?" I stared into my coffee. "It keeps things tidy," I said. "But tidy isn't the same as good." The word surprised me. Wanting had started to feel like a crime I'd committed in secret for years. The question landed clean. No drama. Just truth. Helen swallowed. "My sister thinks I should keep everything separate," she said. "Family here, everything else over there. She says it's complicated enough already." "And what do you think?" I asked. Helen's mouth tightened, and I saw it. Her hidden motive. The one she'd been guarding. It wasn't that she didn't care. It was that she cared and it scared her. "I think," she said softly, "that if I let anyone close right now, I'll fall apart. And I'm not sure I can afford that." In the living room, her mother stirred and muttered something angry in her sleep. Helen flinched like her body had learned to brace before her mind could. I looked at her hands. They were steady, but the knuckles were pale. "You don't have to fall apart," I said. "You just don't have to do it alone." She let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped behind her ribs for a week. "I hate needing," she said. "I hate it." "I know," I said. "Needing makes you feel like you're bargaining." She nodded, eyes shining but not spilling. "When I saw you the other day," she said, "I thought, here's a man who understands showing up without making it about himself." That warmed me. Then it scared me. Because it meant I mattered to her in a way that could also become a burden. So I made my own choice, quietly, like most real choices are made. I can install this, I said, tapping the smoke detector. And I can come by once a week if you want. Not to rescue you, just to be one more set of hands. Helen stared at me, as if she was measuring the cost of saying yes. Finally she said, once a week. Not a promise, not a future. A single, manageable step. We kept our voices low while I climbed onto a chair and replaced the old detector. My knees complained. I pretended not to hear them. Helen held the box and the screws, and the domestic simplicity of it nearly broke my heart. When I stepped down, her mother's eyes were open, sharp and suspicious. She looked at me and rasped, "Are you leaving?" Helen answered before I could. "Not yet," she said. Then, after a beat, she added, "And he's not going anywhere right now either." She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at her mother, like she was saying it for both of them. On my drive home, the road lights blurred a little. Not because I was falling in love like a fool. Because for the first time in years, someone had made room for me in a sentence, and I realized how much I'd been starving for that. At 2:17 a.m., the phone rang, and I didn't think romance. I thought something's wrong. When you're 61, late-night calls aren't movie scenes. They're hospitals, bad roads, family emergencies. I sat up too fast, fumbled for my glasses, and saw Helen's name on the screen. For a heartbeat, I just stared, feeling that old fear of being needed, and the newer fear of losing whatever fragile place I'd earned in her life. "Helen," I said. Her voice came out thin. "David, I'm sorry. I wouldn't call this late if I had another option." In the background, I heard a TV murmuring, then a sharp cough, her mother's. Helen lowered her voice. She slipped trying to get to the bathroom. She's not badly hurt, I don't think. But she's shaken, and I can't get her up alone. "I'm on my way," I said, already swinging my legs out of bed. There's a choice men like us make in moments like that, even if we don't name it. You can show up and accept that your life is now connected to someone else's mess. Or you can protect your peace by staying out of it. For years, I'd built my peace out of distance. But distance is a quiet kind of dying. So I grabbed my jacket and my keys and went. The night air was cold enough to wake every joint in my body. I drove carefully, slower than I would have 10 years ago, talking to myself the whole way like that could keep the world steady. Just help. Don't dramatize. Don't make this about you. Helen opened the door before I knocked. Her hair was loose, face pale, eyes too bright. She didn't touch me. She didn't need to. The relief on her face was its own contact. "She's in the hallway," she whispered. Her mother sat on the floor with her back against the wall, wrapped in a blanket like a stubborn child. When she saw me, she narrowed her eyes. "You again?" "Me again," I said softly, crouching down. "Let's get you comfortable." It took time. No heroics. Just angles and patience, and listening to an older woman's pride fight her weakness. Helen and I moved like we'd practiced. One hand under an arm, one knee braced a steady count. When we finally got her into the recliner, her breathing eased. She muttered, "Don't make a fuss," then fell asleep from exhaustion. In the kitchen, Helen sank into a chair as if her bones had been carrying weight all year. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was full. "Thank you," she said, staring at the table. "I hate that I needed to call." "I'm glad you called," I replied. "I'd rather be woken up than shut out." That made her swallow hard. She rubbed her forehead, the way people do when they're holding themselves together by pressure. "My sister wants me to move Mom into a facility next week," she said. "Mom will feel betrayed. And I don't know who I am if I'm not the one who handles it." I nodded. Caretaker becomes identity. Helen's eyes lifted. Exactly. The kitchen clock clicked. Somewhere in the house, an air vent hummed. Ordinary sounds, but they framed something important. This was real life, not a fantasy, where feelings solve logistics. "I saw you differently after the grocery store," Helen said suddenly. "Not because you helped. Because you didn't perform. You weren't trying to impress me. You were just decent. Decent." I'd been called that before, usually as a consolation prize. I've been decent my whole life, I said, more bitterly than I intended. And most days it feels like that's the same as invisible. Helen's face softened, and I watched her choose her words like they mattered. When I said you matter, she said, I wasn't offering you a storybook. I was telling you what I saw. A man who still shows up. A man who doesn't demand, who doesn't take. That's rare. My throat tightened. I looked down at my hands. Older hands, steady hands, hands that had been useful but rarely held. So what is this? I asked. Between us. Because I can keep helping Helen. I can install detectors and lift boxes and bring groceries. But I can't live in the gray forever. It turns me into a shadow again. That was my final internal choice. Ask for clarity and risk hearing no, or stay quiet and keep the comfort of not being rejected. I chose the risk. The strange thing is, even the fear felt like life. Helen didn't answer quickly. She stood, walked to the sink, then turned back as if facing me required a straight spine. This is me, she said. Learning how to let someone be close without turning them into a crutch. I don't want to use you. And I don't want you to rescue me. I don't want to rescue you, I said. I want to stand next to you. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. Then we do it honestly, she said. No promises we can't keep. No pretending our age doesn't come with limits. But we can have coffee. We can take walks. We can call each other when it's hard. We can stop acting like we're supposed to do the rest alone. I felt something settle in my chest, not fireworks, but peace. The kind you get when a truth finally has a shape. Outside, the sky was still dark, but the edge of morning was starting to thin it. I stood, pulled on my jacket, and paused at the doorway. Helen, I said, I'm not asking you to be my forever. I'm asking you to let me be your now. She held my gaze. Then be my now, she said. We stood there a moment longer, not moving closer, not breaking the quiet respect we'd built. In real life, you notice practical things. The dishes waiting in the sink, the pill organizer on the counter, the way her hands trembled from fatigue. I can stay a little, I offered. In the living room. So you're not listening for every sound. Helen hesitated, then nodded once. That would help, she said. So I sat with the TV low while she wrapped herself in a blanket on the couch. No romance, no speeches, just presence lowering the temperature of fear. Near dawn, she brought me a glass of water and said almost shyly, Thursday at the community center. If you still want to. I'll be there, I answered, and this time it wasn't a line. It was a decision. Driving home later, I didn't rehearse grand futures. I rehearsed small honesty. Telling my son I'd met someone, saying yes to a walk even when my knees complained, showing up without expecting applause. For once, enough didn't sound like settling. It sounded like peace. And peace, I realized, is its own kind of love. Today, by the time I got home, sun was up. I drank coffee silent and felt present. For once that was really enough.